Hi everybody. Okay, I've got a couple of different things I want to talk about that happened to me. But first, I want to read a little bit in the Bible. Um, Keep on loving each other as brothers. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. So this is in Hebrews 13, 1, 2, and 3. The main one I want to reference is the entertaining strangers unawares. Actually, I'm going to do three. One was when I was really little, and I don't know how old I was. I was in elementary school. There was a store in our area. It was called Treasure City, which has been closed many years. We had gone shopping. It was kind of like a Kmart, kind of like a Walmart, lower prices, like a Rose's. Anyway, we had gone to do some shopping with my mom, me and my sister and my mom. When we came out of the store, there was a guy. He looked like maybe he was in his 20s or 30s, and he was standing beside a motorcycle to the right of us. And I could not take my eyes off of his eyes. They were like an aquamarine color. Then they just glowed. And to me, even though he was by a motorcycle and dressed in motorcycle attire, he looked like Jesus to me. And I looked at my mom and I said, "That man right there looks like Jesus." And she looked at me and she said, "He does." And I waved at him, but we didn't stop and talk to him. I just know that I was drawn to him and that he looked like Jesus, which could have been because he comes to visit our earth unawares. We don't know that he's going to be here. Same thing with angels. They come unaware in a human form. So actually, I'm going to tell you another one too because it just came to mind. Once, a long time ago, oh gosh, I can't remember even like what time period, late 90s maybe, early 2000s. Me and my husband had gone to a turkey shoot, and it was kind of down the hill from the road, the main road. So we were shooting the guns and stuff, and all of a sudden there was a car crash. And I was getting ready to walk up the hill to see if I could help with anything. And I looked at my husband and I said, "Are you going to come and help?" And he said, "No, no, no, I'm not going up there." Evidently, something had stirred in him prior or whatever. He didn't want to see anything bad or whatever. But I had the heart of helping and caring and wanting to do something to help any way I could. So I walked up to the car, and at that time there was a commercial that came on, an advertisement about when there was an accident to turn the ignition off. And at that time, you put a key in the ignition and you turned it to turn it on. So you had to turn it to turn it off. Now there's a push button thing. But anyway, back then you had to have a key to turn on the car. So I checked the door, and the door was unlocked, the driver's side door. And it looked like two young guys, teenagers or early 20s. I wasn't sure how old they were. The passenger side, the seat had collapsed completely. The driver's side, the seat was back, but it wasn't all the way back. But I just reached in and turned the ignition to make sure it was off, because I kept thinking, what if there's a gas leak and the car's running? It could maybe cause an explosion or something. I don't know. That just kind of crossed my mind. While I was standing there by the car, I saw this lady walking towards the car. She had curlers all in her hair. She had a bathrobe on, like a house coat, and she had slippers, looked like pajamas or like night clothes. And she was walking towards a car, but there was no houses right near there. So I don't know where she came from, but she was walking towards the car. And I looked up and I was like, hey, and she said, do you got this? And I'm like, yeah. I said, but you can help too if you want. And she said, okay. And she turned around and walked on away. And I looked back in the car, and when I looked back up, she was gone. I don't know where she went. Because I don't know where she came from, and I didn't see her appear or disappear. So I'm thinking in my mind, maybe she was an angel, coming to assist or whatever. And I don't know. But anyway, the fire truck got there and the rescue, and it was all taken care of. I found out the next day from a coworker at my part-time job, which was a clothing store. There was a lady that worked in there, and I was so distraught over this accident because it was young boys, and I wasn't sure. I just had it on my mind. I wonder if they were Christians. And anyway, she asked me, are you okay? And I said, well, I'm struggling with something. And she said, what's wrong? And I said, there was an accident last night that I was there. It was two young boys. And I said, I have been worried and wondering if they were Christians or not. And I said, I prayed for them while I was there. I kept talking to them to reassure them and whatnot. And I said, but I don't know if they were actually Christians. She said, I know who you're talking about. Those two boys went to school with her son, and he knew them, and that their whole family were Christians and that they went to church regularly. So it was like a big burden was taken off of me. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, for sending her to answer my question, and that she knew them. So anyway, okay, so that was that one. Another one that I had was, had gone to a doctor's appointment, and I was coming back from the doctor's appointment to come home, and I was in traffic, and there was like a little median beside my car, and I looked down, and then when I looked up, there's this guy in a wheelchair, an old guy, and he was like coming towards me. And I just automatically grabbed a dollar bill and held it out my window. But when I looked at him, he caught my gaze. He had aquamarine eyes, and they just glowed. And I'm like, the first thought that came to my mind was, he looks like he could be an angel. Then I said, have a good day or something like that. I gave him the money, and then I kind of looked back, and when I looked in the side mirror, because he went behind, like beside my car, I looked in my side mirror thinking I'm going to see him towards the back of my car. He was nowhere. He was not there. I don't know where he went, and he was in a wheelchair. So he couldn't have gotten cross traffic that quick because he was on the median. It blew my mind. So I believe that might have been an angel. Another instance, I was going into the post office or coming out of the post office, and there was a guy in a wheelchair, and I said hey to him. And then I got in the car and drove off, and I didn't say anything more to him. But after I left, it went through my mind, which might have been prompting from God, I don't know, that could have been an angel. I don't know. So, I mean, I've had experiences where I didn't know. if they were an angel or not. But it's like I had the sense that they might have been. So you never know. So let's see. The Jesus encounter, the guy on the median, and the guy at the post office. And I'm trying to think. There was another instance. I talked about the haunted house thing that I lived in once upon a time. There were other things that happened around that house that I had so many instances at that house. I don't know if I on the previous video if I mentioned that my grandmother who lived in the basement apartment said that she saw a man standing over her a couple of times when she was downstairs. Trying to think. Oh, there was a time when I lived in a different place years ago. It was probably late 80s, early 90s. At night, I was sitting on the couch and I saw what looked like a woman, a ghost woman, standing kind of in, it was like a step up from the living room, like to where the kitchen dinette area was. And she didn't come any further than that. And it was like she was there and then she was gone. And we had the TV on and stuff, and I had heard that if you have electronics going, that they kind of don't come near electronics. So it's possible that that could be why. But I mentioned that to my husband, and he was like, really? So there had been quite a few things that I had seen that I had told my husband about, that whenever I told him, he was like, oh, well, I believe it because you've seen and, heard so much. I've had audible voice of what I believe was probably Jesus or the Holy Spirit. And I actually thought that was a person in my car. And I think I might have put that on a previous video. The one that I wanted to really speak about today was something that had stumped me. And if anybody sees this and they have a suggestion, my neighbor gave me a general idea of what she thought it might have been, but I don't know if it's positive or negative. That's what demonic or from God. Anyway, my husband had a brain tumor, and I think it was after his surgery to remove the tumor that he had to go through radiation, and he had a bandage on his head and whatever, but he was starting to get better and had gone outside, and I was in the other room way back in the back, and I was walking towards the living room from the bathroom back there, and I was talking to him, but I knew he couldn't really hear me way back there, so I was like, oh, wait, I'm coming, I'll tell you when I get there. So I got to the doorway coming into the dinette kitchen, and on the other side of the room, past the living room, I saw him walking in the doorway to the back bedroom. So I went to I was talking to him as I was walking towards that back bedroom. He turned and looked at me and then turned left and went towards where the closet was in that room. So I went, and when I got to the door, I turned and looked to the left. He was not in there. And just as I noticed he was not in there, he actually walked in the back door, which was the opposite direction. I turned and walked back towards the door, and I said, are you feeling okay? And he said, yeah, why? And I said, I just had the strangest experience, and I couldn't understand what I saw. It was like astro projection or something, which I don't practice, and I don't, we're not supposed to delve into that. But because he had had that major surgery, and was weak and whatever, I don't know. I personally thought maybe it wasn't, he had collapsed. Maybe that was his spirit because he was not going to be here anymore. That's why I asked him, are you feeling okay? Because I'm thinking maybe he left his body and then went back in his body. And then he came in the back door. So anyway, my neighbor had told me, she prayed about it, and she felt like it was his response to when he was walking away. He's walking away from something, and then when he turned, he's turning away from something or turning towards something. Turning away from bad, turning to good. And I didn't understand that until eventually he had an intestinal thing happen, and he was in the hospital for 7 weeks before he passed away in 2009. So that kind of came to mind, what she had said. He accepted Christ on the day before he passed away. So I believe that I told him, I said, did what my brother tell you? What you told my brother, is that correct? What he told me, that you accepted Christ? And he said, yes. And I said, you couldn't have given me a better gift, because you'll be in heaven and you can greet me when I come. So he smiled, and then that that came to mind, that he was turning away from bad and turning to God, is kind of the interpretation I got in my mind from what my neighbor had said. But if you think it's something else, then please let me know. Give me a post or whatever, and I will keep you in my prayers. Thank you for watching, and I'll post more as I remember them, and as I get the urging to post something. So you guys have a great day. Thank you.